we're really happy to see you at The Missing Link, which is International Perspectives on Culture and Climate, part of the British Council's Climate Connection programme. And of course, I, from Julie's Bicycle, is delighted to be here during at this particular time in Milan for the Youth COP and Pre-COP. Just before we get started, we do have live captions available for those people online. You'll be sent a link by the Julie's Bicycle team. If you have questions for our speakers, both online and also in the audience, we're going to make sure that you've got time, and Sophie over there will be collecting questions from the audience. Please send them through the chat box if you're online. We also have a roving photographer. So if you don't want to have a photograph taken, please just let us know. That's not a problem at all. The bathrooms are behind, for those of you who are here, are behind this screen. And in the event of an emergency anywhere on this campus, that's the exit, and we will meet out of the main entrance. So we have a terrific panel that we're going to be talking to, that are beaming in from the UK, from Rome, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Uganda. So thank you all for coming, and thank you all for being here. But before I introduce them, I'd like to welcome the British Ambassador to Italy, Her Excellency Jill Morris. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that. And welcome, everybody. I am indeed Jill Morris, the British Ambassador to Italy. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you here today, either in person or online, to this wonderful Villa Necchi, which we have temporarily taken over this week as the UK house to host all of our Road to COP26 activities this week, while Milan is hosting the Youth for Climate event and, of course, the pre-COP preparatory conference. And we are determined to contribute to making those events, Youth for Climate Driving Ambition and pre-COP, a success. And our programme here at the UK House is a result of intense cooperation between the very many UK institutions and organisations operating in Italy. And we're all working very closely together to promote the COP26 goals and to drive for ambition. So over the next 3 days, Villa Necchi will become a dynamic space for British and Italian members of civil society, business, academia and local administration and young people to share ideas and catalyse climate action, convening the voice of non-state actors in support of a net zero path to a carbon neutral economy. There are 14 events over 2.5 days, many hybrid, such as this, to engage as many people as possible. An intense programme that indicates the high level of ambition that we share with our Italian partners. So please do have a look at the programme online. But to give you an idea of the range of conversations that we're going to be holding here this week, just to mention a few. This evening we have the first Europe Green Investment Forum, which will be opened by the COP President Alok Sharma and Lord Grimstone, our DIT Investment Minister. We will have a Race for Our Planet event, which will see the participation of high-level climate champion Nigel Topping. And last but not least, we have a series of sector-specific activities ranging from smart cities to alpine reforestation, from hydrogen energy to sustainable fashion, all of which will help us advocate the need for sustainable solutions to address climate change. So you can see from the range of topics that I've just mentioned that we're really building the broadest coalition possible, because all of us are affected by climate change and we must all act, and the time to act is now. So I'm very delighted that our colleagues from the British Council are here today to open our UK House series by looking at the impact of climate change on the arts and culture sector. From tangible and intangible loss of heritage to the role that contemporary art and artists can take, climate change impact here is being increasingly understood. So I'm really delighted that this is our first event to open the UK House activities this week. So I'm now delighted to pass to my colleague Rachel Launay, Country Director in Italy of the British Council, to introduce the session, and their partner, the pioneering non-profit organisation, Julie's Bicycle. Thank you to you for your collaboration and partnering, and I wish you all a very stimulating and interesting conversation. Buon lavoro. Grazie mille. Thank you.
Many thanks, Jill, for your warm words and setting out such an ambitious plan for this week. It's really exciting. It's such an honour to open the first of these 3 days of diverse and important events that will provide a platform to explore the urgent issues facing our planet, challenging our leaders, our governments, and all of us as citizens. And what a wonderful place to be in for those of us who are here physically. Villa Necchi is part of the Fondo Ambiente Italiano, which is the equivalent of the UK's National Trust. And for 3 days will be UK House, as Jill has said. The British Council is really proud to contribute to the climate conversation through the Climate Connection. This is the British Council's global platform for dialogue, cooperation and action against climate change in the lead up to COP26. This platform is bringing together people from all over the world to meet the challenges of climate change through the British Council 3 areas of work, which are arts and culture, education and the English language. And most importantly, the platform is providing an opportunity for young people to be heard and to take concrete action in many different ways. Too many to quote now, to list now, but you can find them all on the British Council Climate Connection webpage. But I will mention just one of these initiatives. It is very significant, and it is the Global Youth Letter on Climate Action. It was launched earlier this month, and it is a call for action from young people globally, directly addressing the leaders attending COP26 in November. The letter is the result of a large-scale research exercise carried out earlier this year between the British Council and Catalyst in Communities, who have garnered the views, experiences and aspirations of 8,000 young people across 23 countries. The insights from this Global Youth Letter, as well as the additional voices from 8,000 Rising, will be presented at COP26 in Glasgow as part of Youth Empowerment Day on the 5th of November, and we look forward to hearing what these results are. But now we move to today. The British Council is so delighted to partner with Julie's Bicycle, who's leading on groundbreaking research looking at the role of cultural policy in the climate change agenda. A crucial contribution to this research has been gathered through a series of policy dialogues and roundtables in the UK, Turkey, Indonesia, Colombia and Nigeria. And today we're delighted that during pre-COP week, Julie's Bicycle is leading this international roundtable to address the missing link, international perspectives on climate and culture. It's a hybrid event, as we know. We have some audience in the room and online, and our panel is in the room and online. A sign of COVID times, maybe, but also a sign that we can do things differently, not only to reduce travel, but to make these opportunities available wherever you are. So it's my great pleasure to hand over to Alison Tickell, CEO and founder of Julie's Bicycle, to get the show on the road. Thank you and enjoy the discussion. Alison, over to you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to start with a little tiny bit about ourselves, Julie's Bicycle. We've been working at the interface with culture and climate now for almost 15 years, unpicking the nuts and bolts of what it takes to really drive forward sustainable cultural and arts practice, from the very practical through to the policy. And we've landed here at a policy place, understanding that policy has got an incredibly important role to play today. This is, as Rachel said, it's the last in this series of international conversations on climate and culture, and it is an overdue conversation. In fact, I would go so far, after all these years, to say that climate action has not gone faster or further because negotiating our collective responses to the difficult truth of the climate crisis has been led by scientists, economists, politicians, and bureaucrats. Yet seeking and speaking truths is fundamentally what the arts are about. Shaping lifestyles and stuff to reinforce values and build our economies is fundamentally what the creative industries are about. And crafting the past and present into deeply meaningful symbols is what cultural heritage is about. Culture, wow. Those voices that have not been involved in climate negotiations but speak to and for us all is a critical, perhaps the critical missing link. Over the last few months, the roundtables, research and conversations that we've had the privilege of having with people all over the world has highlighted two areas of relevance to all policymakers, whether they be from culture or otherwise, and at all scales, local, city, national and international. The first is that the cultural community pretty much everywhere is already deeply connected to climate issues and is already finding solutions and spreading the word. Whilst the emphasis and experiences are very different, the creative climate movement is mobilised and raring to go. The second is that the similarity of general themes and insights across many countries and regions, though again with very different emphasis depending on where you are, is really striking. Again and again, we heard about artists and cultural professionals from across the cultural ecosystem asserting their relationship with social and environmental issues. For some, the focus is greenhouse gas emissions. For others, environmental justice, land rights, nature, circular design, all at some stage converge into a single whole, which is, of course, climate action. Again and again, we heard about the need for better policy support for this, stronger frameworks and much more dialogue with cultural power brokers. These urgent voices from the field want to tell their stories. They want to share their precious knowledge and their skills and to be connected to the wider creative climate movement. They want to have an impact. We heard about art, how art can be a dangerous endeavour. The safety and security of creative climate activists is far from assured, especially in the context of land, democracy and cultural rights. And we heard about the need to challenge the dominant model of competitive growth, which serves some in the creative and cultural communities so much better than others. These themes are almost certainly familiar to you because they are generic to the climate movement. Every sector, every city, every community experiences some or all of these. There is nothing exceptional about cultural practice which makes it especially important to align it to wider policy. But there is a lot that is exceptional about culture and its transformative potential. There are extraordinary people protecting and preserving culture and heritage, creating safe places, strengthening communities, bringing joy. And there are many inspiring examples of circular design, new material use, urban and city partnerships, institutions transforming, new vibrant businesses, ideas and skills, and indeed some very progressive policy making. The creative mind put to good purpose has immense potential. What are the ideas we've come up with so far? Well, we haven't finished, but we have some very clear favourites. We need collective and fair targets, backed up by plans specifically for culture, which are going to, at the very least, align with the science and better aim for a regenerative cultural ecology, one that puts back more than it takes. To make this work, we need to bridge the gulf between pioneers on the ground and policymakers. This means making room for hyperlocal and sector-specific expertise to inform policy well. Then we need to work better together to ensure that the big ideas and solutions, which are not going to be necessarily the biggest labels or the biggest marketing budgets, can be adopted at scale and speed. We need to know how. Everywhere we hear about the hunger for knowledge, how to make the work, the productions, the tours, the staff, the supply chains, the experiences sustainable. There's a huge potential to transform culture by focusing on skills and knowledge. And of course, we need space for the new voices. Those of us from wealthy and historically extractive economies have extra responsibility, not just to reduce our own impacts, but to make space for others, including resourcing poorer economies. Of course, that's why climate finance for developing economies is baked into the Paris Agreement. It should also be baked into, for example, cultural exchange. This panel will pick up on some of these ideas, bringing together national and international cultural policymakers with artists and activists on the ground. But before we go into the panel, just to set the tone, we have a short film by Yiğit Özyeğeş that was part of the roundtable that we ran with our partners and good friends İKSV in Turkey. On top of his amazing career in TV and film, Yiğit is a committed environmentalist and a strong advocate for culture to do its bit. So enjoy. That was Yiğit Özyeğeş, who's busy in Turkey doing some really exciting work campaigning on behalf of Mother Earth, and really easily sort of combining that with his work as a television and film character. So I'd like now to move on to introduce an amazing panel that we have. We're hoping to involve as many of you as possible, both online and in the room, with some questions. But before that, I'd like to introduce you to each of the speakers in turn, who will briefly introduce themselves. There are biographies, full of biographies in the supporting materials. Do read them because they're an exciting lot. So first of all, I'm going to invite the Honourable Hilmar Farid, Director General of Culture from the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, who spoke very eloquently at our round table that we had with Partners in Spirit in Indonesia, and we are truly honoured to have you here. Thank you, Hilmar. Can we have Hilmar on there? Great. Okay, so Hilmar, I think you need to turn off your mute.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the invitation, and greetings for all of you from Jakarta. It's already evening here, so I don't know how to address you. I think you're in the afternoon right now. So I'm Hilmar Farid. I'm the Director General of Culture at the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology in Indonesia. Just to give you an idea about the diversity of Indonesia, we are a population of 270 million people who live in an archipelago of 17,000 islands, consists of no less than 1,100 ethnic groups, and speak different 680 different languages. So my job as the Director General of Culture is to facilitate cultural connections within and between communities. And art is, of course, a very important element in that. And we are working with a wide range of artists who are working with traditional arts, modern and contemporary forms of art. So not to mention, forget to mention indigenous communities who have been actively also involved in climate actions. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. That's quite an extraordinary portfolio and an incredible responsibility. I'd like now to introduce friends in Uganda, Bruno Akejo, who leads Action for Child Social and Economic Transformation, and Jasper Ewoni of the Indigenous hip-hop movement for climate change action. Jasper and Bruno, hi, good to see you. Would you like to introduce yourselves? I think you're on mute too.
Hello, everyone.
Great.
Yeah, my name is Bruno Akejo from Uganda. I lead Access Uganda as the executive director. We'll discuss more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasper Wine. I'm an Indigenous hip-hop practitioner and also founder of Lango Indigenous hip-hop and also, of course, a member of the East African Builders Collective.
Brilliant. Thank you both for coming and joining us. And now to internationally recognised environmental lawyer, climate policy expert and powerhouse of climate justice, Farhana Yamin, who's been pretty much to every COP contributed significantly to the game-changing Paris Agreement. Farhana.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. Really delighted to be here. And I'm speaking to you from Glasgow. So I've come here for a site visit, mainly to see artistic spaces and to get to know how the creative community here will respond and support all of those coming to COP. I'm also a trustee of Julie's Bicycle, and I was really pleased when Alison asked me to join because as all of you have recognised, we need the arts, culture, heritage, creative sectors. We are in trouble and we need everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Farhana. And I now have the pleasure of introducing Erminia Sciacchitano, Officer of the Minister's Cabinet from the Italian Ministry of Culture, who's been also instrumental in advocating so successfully for cultural heritage during Italy's G20 host year of great significance to Indonesia. Thank you, Erminia, for joining us.
Thank you for your invitation. Yes, I have experience in cultural policy making, in particular on cultural heritage policy development. So I'm now serving the cabinet of the Italian Minister of Culture, and I've contributed to the G20, to the shaping of the G20 declaration just adopted by the G20 cultural ministers. But I also have a previous experience in the European Commission, 6 years experience, where I've contributed to the shaping of the EU policy on cultural heritage, and in particular the European Year of Cultural Heritage, which I hope it's also helping to advocate and to lift up the message.
Thank you so much. And last but absolutely certainly not least, I'm delighted to introduce you to Wole Agdugbele, an environmental advocate from Nigeria. He also attended our roundtable. Thank you for coming again. A youth activist who's been recognised by both the United Nations and British Council, and a Sustainable Development Goal champion, as well as being a really talented young singer-songwriter who has performed for us. Thank you. Hi, Wole.
Hi, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here once again. And my name is Wole Adegbile. Like Alison has said, I'm an environmental advocate and SDGs propagator in Nigeria. And over the years, I've been able to encourage or to teach young people on climate action, starting from the primary school to the university. And I've been making use of scientific methods to teach climate action across different ministries, agencies, and departments. So in 2021, I also thought of including artistry in promoting climate action, and I released the first urban musical video on climate change in Nigeria, and it has been making a huge impact as well. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Wole, and thank you, panelists. We're actually on time, so you've been brilliant. We can kick straight off with questions, and my first question is to the Honourable Minister, Mr. Farid. So could we have him up on the... Perhaps we could show all the panelists at once. So Indonesia, I'll just kick off with the question, is very vulnerable. As we know, it's very vulnerable to to climate change. And you spoke really eloquently at the round table on art, the work that you are stewarding, and the role of artists in addressing some of the challenges that you face. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that work, please? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think in the last few years, one of our main attentions has been on climate issues, like environmental in general, but also climate change in particular. And the reason for that is that because many of these communities here in Asia are affected directly by that. In terms of artistic expressions, there have been various and different forms of artistic responses to the issues of climate change. And I think what is interesting, it is not something that is imposed from above. Yeah, it's not like a general idea spreading up, starting from universities, but it's something that is felt directly at the grassroots level. And my job basically is to encourage people to speak up, to address all these issues in different artistic forms. And what is interesting from that experience is that communities begin to understand climate issues like environmental change and all that from their perspective. And it's very important because, as we know, Indonesia, like many other places in the world, have a strong oral tradition. Yeah, and it is so powerful if you use or tap these cultural resources in order to communicate your ideas. So what is happening right now is basically a conversation at the local level, at the grassroots level, with different forms of expressions, like addressing all these the impacts of climate change. And we are organizing like festivals around these issues. There is a big one coming up in the end of November, which would basically address these issues, but not simply to expose problems that occurred in the last decades, but also to think about the spirit of hope. And I think this is also very important, especially for younger people, to really look at all these problems, not simply from a critical perspective, but also to inject hope into the discussion. And it's very encouraging if you see the different forms, and I'm more than happy to share with all of you later on when the festivals are taking place, the information about that. So yeah, it is now gaining some momentum in the provinces in particular, and we expect to see more and more. And we really hope through our network here to also have an international conversation. So that is my hope.
Great, and you are taking on the G20 summit next year, so we'll pick that up in a minute, because Amelia and you, I think, will have a lot to talk about. Just another really quick question before I move on, and this is really, we had two of you at the round table in Indonesia. Also, we had the creative industries were represented very strongly, and I'm interested in your 2017 law on the advancement of culture passed by the Indonesian government, creating a really different kind of framework which encompasses that notion of the creative economy alongside the need to really focus on strengthen and create space for the many, many ethnic communities that you have in Indonesia. Do you want to tell us just very briefly a little bit about that? Because it feels like it's of relevance to policymakers everywhere.
Yeah, the law itself really helped us to turn this amorphous, what he calls culture, into something that you can actually really manage. No? And the focus is around three aspects, actually. One is the protection by protecting cultural heritage, etc., and then development, and then utilization of that cultural heritage. And another important development is the index of cultural development. because sometimes if you work in the field of cultural policy, it's difficult to measure. But now we have that index of cultural development, and I think it's a very important tool for us really to measure the advancement, if there is any, of our cultural activities.
Thank you so much. We discussed that quite a lot during the roundtable, and there will be more about that in our final reports because it's a really interesting framework. Bruno and Jasper, I'd like to ask you both a couple of questions, if I may, and then we'll see if there's anything that's come from the audience. Bruno, your work mobilising communities locally and translating that into really local frameworks and local support has brought you to the doors of culture. This is very similar to Farhana. Tell me how you see it working in your community in really practical terms, and how can we support the creative climate movement where you are? What do you need to make it happen? You're on mute. You're on mute, Bruno. Bruno? You're on mute. I'll tell you what, while that's sorted out, I'm just going to pivot a bit. Sorry, Bruno, we can't hear you. So I'll let the tech team sort that out, and I'm going to just bring in Farhana, if I may. Farhana, so obviously you've been involved centrally in climate negotiations, in climate law, for over 20 years. And again, the same question, why has your gaze now shifted to culture and community? What is it that you're seeing happening?
It's 30, actually.
30.
This year. I started in 1991, and many of the meetings then that I attended as an advisor to the small island states were mainly, they sent meteorologists and they sent environmental ministries, and the main meetings were dominated by, then later on, the economists sort of arrived. So there was a very heavy sort of presence from these more technical, scientific knowledge bases and the professions that represented them. We obviously did have civil society in much smaller numbers, but mainly in the form of NGOs, like organized, largely northern-based NGOs who had the resources and had understood and had worked on global issues before. So we didn't have representatives of movements, of people. We didn't have youth representatives. We didn't have indigenous people. We didn't have farmers. We didn't have women. We didn't have a gender program. So over my lifetime, it's been a great pleasure and an honor. And in some cases, I've helped, the gender program, the indigenous peoples program, and the platform that was created. So you have these new constituencies of people with lived experience and knowledge. And especially that is critical when they need to make choices and be part of the decision-making framework. We had a much more technocratic top-down process. And I see Glasgow as very much a massive pivot. I hope it will be a massive pivot in recognizing that lived experience, that people are the centerpiece of our climate efforts, and that trying to do this and through more technocratic means on the basis of knowledge that is hidden in, say, an economic model that has profound implications for fairness, that has profound implications on behaviors, that has profound implications for who gets to pick up the costs of action as well as inaction. I think that pivot towards people, their lived experience and involving and everyone is really critical. And I guess I'm speaking to a converted audience here because you've all tuned in on a Zoom to discuss the role of culture. But I think culture and the sector needs to center the voices of those who are harmed as a result of historic and systemic injustices, the culture sector, if it doesn't do that, is going to replicate the existing power imbalances. It's going to replicate further marginalisation. It's going to create new injustices. It's going to continue, in many cases, being a very elite activity that is not open up to others. So I'm very much welcoming and looking forward to Bruno and Jasper, talking about the way in which culture has to be reimagined and driven and supported and funded at the local level, at the grassroots level, be on the basis of people with lived experience and give expression to their vision and what they want to hear, see, feel, respond to. And just my final comment is I'm also, been part of a number of initiatives in this country that came as a result of this rebellion that took place, Extinction Rebellion in 2019, which became a global movement. One of the initiatives that came from the energy of that was something called Culture Declares Emergency. And that was a response by the arts and cultural organizations, by many eminent artists, of how they would respond to the cultural and the climate and ecological emergency. And I feel like almost we need a global version of that, but we need to open out how we are embracing and involving and building in an ever greater coalition of people on the basis of parity, not on the basis of inequality, not in the basis of existing power imbalances. And we have to, as part of that, confront and sit in the discomfort of the world that we're in is saturated and built on the basis of a very extractive system, of a system that was largely supported by colonialism and force, by military rule and imperialism. And that still continues today. And that is why we're seeing so many demands at COP26 about fairness and justice, because COVID has exposed something that we really didn't want to sit with and feel and think about too much. So slightly longer answer to your question, but I think the role of culture, as Yeat very eloquently said, and I'm very jealous that he was, sitting in nature as he said it, it is to not preach, but to open us up and allow us to sit both in our discomfort as well as embrace the joy and the challenges of shift in our thinking. And we need to think and do things very, very differently from now on, all of us.
Thank you, Farhana. That's all my questions covered. Great. Bit of spontaneous applause for you there. Jasper and Bruno, have we got you back so you can actually respond both to Farhana and we can hear what you've got to say. Do you want to start, Bruno? No. Have you got your mute turned on? Off, rather. Don't turn it on. No?
Are you able to hear me now?
Brilliant. That's it. Go for it.
Great. Okay. Hello once again. I think we are aware that between 3.5 to 7 billion trees are cut down every year world over. So if we are to think deep, what if we nurture children through cultural norms and values that protect the environment? Won't we have less numbers? What if we have strong cultural policies that integrate environmental protection? Won't we have less numbers? What if we integrate climate action and environmental protection strategies into the local government development plans? Won't we reduce these numbers? Cultural norms and values are passed from one generation to the next. Culture is not caught. It is something not taught but caught. A child grows within a cultural heritage of his people, observes and mimics the action of his siblings and elders. So we are aware that our cultures have had informal ways to contribute to environmental protection. For example, our elders knew about supporting planting trees, and we lived in that natural environment. Our elders also knew how many trees were in the compounds, which tree species to plant, in what numbers and why, which trees to cut and which ones not to, including putting family members to look after some of these trees. So, where are these norms and values? They are all getting extinct. So what should we do now? What can work at a local level to get back some of these norms that culture really had? Can we identify and document cultural norms and values that are linked to climate change or environmental protection? And this can be done by engaging academia, researchers, or the universities. Can we get the climate change discussions rooted down at the local level? And this can be done by creative movements, promoting the norms that have been identified so that our children get to know this as they grow. Because changing mind is hard, but what if we nurture them and they grow while knowing protection of the environment is necessary? Let's formulate these norms as cultural policies on environmental protection. Let's design policy frameworks that engage culture with the local government, engaging culture with the private sector actor and local NGOs in the climate discussions or the climate change actions. Can we integrate environmental protection and climate actions in the local government development plans? Can we do it also with the private sector actors, integrating climate actions in their business models so that the local people can adopt climate smart practices as a ways of adapting to climate change? Can we also provide smooth operating environments for these private sector actors doing businesses that are already climate smart practices integrated? We can do this maybe by partnership with the local government through public-private partnership. You asked me a question, what do we need maybe to make some of this happen? We are aware world over that indigenous organizations, cooperative movements, or local organizations get very, very little funding, or they do not have access to funding. So can we engage agencies to start funding indigenous NGOs or creative movements that we can meaningfully engage national leaders in climate actions? Can we release that cash to the locals so that climate actions can be implemented at a local level? The feasible actions can be implemented at a local level with the local people.
Yeah.
Can you engage the locally rooted organizations to support the local governments, integrate climate issues or climate smart actions into their development plans? Because the actions they do affect the locals directly. So if they integrate these plans into their development plans, I'm very sure that the locals will adopt some of these plans that can protect our environment.
Thank you.
You know, as I just conclude, there is an African proverb that says, when vultures surround you, try not to die. The climate change issue is like vultures that has already surrounded us. Let's not just pretend that we are so much in love that we cannot tell when it's raining. We should find better ways to do right things at the right time for the right reasons.
Thank you, Bruno. Yeah, I think we'd all thoroughly agree with that. Jasper, would you like to just tell us a little bit about the Indigenous Hip Hop Coalition that you are stewarding and what you think its importance is to creative climate action?
Yes, thank you. I must say that the hip hop movement complements our cultures. I like it when Bruno talked about, the roles of our cultures, in environmental protection. That's great. So then we get to understand that environmental protection was key back then, and tree cutting was not within the vision and the wisdom of our elders back then. But of course, our cultures have done something and not enough. Then as hip-hoppers, it is our responsibility to study and learn our cultures thoroughly well and use that to add value and to impact more. We are extractors of indigenous knowledge. So as the hip hop community, we are not isolated. We also look at climate change as a very big issue for us. If I look at the hip hop Declaration of Peace that was signed by the UN 20 years ago, specifically looking at Principle 2 and 15, they all emphasize on causing no harm to the environment because we only have one planet to live in, and the action should be taken now. That's why we say hip hop is a lifestyle. So no harm. Now, regarding on how the movement can contribute, first of all, hip hop allows us to reach on a wider basis, using the mic power to educate, motivate, influence, and also hold our people accountable on climate change action. And then putting the younger generation to that accountability space to do something about climate change because it affects them directly. Think about a created new breed of African youth generation that is focused on climate leadership, and that would be powerful. Hip hop allows us to delve into a conversation that engages cultural leaders to reclaim the roles of culture in climate action. Yes, Bruno said that the practices are now getting extinct. For us, hip hop allows us to reclaim them back. You know, we are now reclaiming what was taken away from us, you know, from foreign ideologies. Now we want to get into a space where now we can formulate cultural policies on climate change in the local dialect and develop initiatives at the local, level that is supervised by the lower cultural leaders. Not just that, we need to delve deeper into the development of a culturally accepted curriculum.
We've lost you. Ouch.
And guidelines for the within the country, beyond the continent, about environmental protection that people can study right from childhood and be aware of exactly what they need to do to preserve our environment. You know, in doing this, we are not doing something that is different. We are just taking our responsibility as hip-hoppers to preserve our cultures, archive the history, and of course, to teach the next generation on how our cultures tackle climate change. This is the best way to contribute to climate action because different communities, cultures, and agroecological zones will be taking on different ways of environmental protection. And then this is the best way to keep all these interventions taking root in our communities. So now as builders, we are now on the agenda to bring on board all the indigenous hip hop practitioners across all cultures to be leaders and echoing out loud the truth of activism, the truth on environmental protection, the truth of advocacy and peace building, not just within us humans, but also within nature and the environments that we live around. So hip hop will then continue to use their indigenous knowledge to design and implement cultural specific indigenous hip hop projects that contribute directly to climate change action.
Thank you, Bruno. There's a real call to arms, and I can see people nodding. It's really inspiring. And Aminia, you've been a highly effective advocate for cultural heritage. And of course, there's all sorts of overlaps between arts, creative industries and cultural heritage as a key theme for the G20 this year. You've heard from actually everybody on the panel talking about the importance of how this needs to be rooted in community. What have you learned about the political context for culture in the G20 and what might resonate across to COP26, bearing in mind what our panelists have been talking about?
Well, let me start from the critical missing link that you mentioned in your intro, because I think this is the starting point. And for many years, the culture has been marginal overall, not only in the climate discourse, but it's the representation in the global arena. So I think there is a kind of glass ceiling around culture and culture policy. But now things are changing. Also thanks to the work done by UNESCO, by ICOMOS, ICOM, we've done a huge work to ensure a more robust anchoring of culture within the global climate agenda. The Climate Heritage Network, terrific development in the last 2 years in mobilizing the sector, asking the right questions. So I think this is a turning point. It's also testified by the very recent speech of the President of the European Commission, who said in the State of the Union that if the European Green Deal has a soul, then it is the European Bauhaus. And the European Bauhaus is exactly a project which really mobilizes the cultural and creative sectors to shape this behavioral transformation. They say to shape the transformation by design. So it's really a cultural revolution. And that's why the European Year of Cultural Heritage also has played its role. And this is why with the Italy took the opportunity of the Italian chairmanship of the G20 to organize the first meeting devoted to culture in the history of the G20, gathering in Rome the culture ministers of the G20 and the representatives of the key international organizations. And the meeting led to the adoption of the Rome Declaration. And we find really very important achievement in the declaration, which states that there is a changing atmosphere. For instance, the unanimous recognition of the transformative role of culture in sustainable development. I think this is now stated, let's say, clearly. The call for the full recognition and integration of culture and the creative economy into development processes and goals, as a driver and enabler of the achievement of the goals set out in the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Again, huge advancement. And an important section of the declaration is dedicated to addressing climate change through culture, with a request to enshrine climate action more firmly into cultural policies and ensure a more robust anchoring of culture within the global endeavors on climate action, including the UN Framework Convention on Climate and in national policies and plans. And I think this is the very first statement at this level. What contributed to this important change? Just to conclude, the extraordinary alignment that we had this year, 2021, because we have partnered, Italy and UK have partnered, and we're partnering both in the COP26 and G20 and G7. So the political messages have been reinforced through this important channel. So the G20 is traditional and economic fora, but it's also helping to send now, and it's the social dimension is widely recognized, helps to address this social dimension and to build the momentum for a better representation of culture in the COP26.
Thank you. So we really are feeling a much, much stronger structural context for culture to start to do its bit. Wale, can I ask you, how does that make you feel? Are you, as a young creative climate pioneer, what are your feelings now about the future and COP26? What do you need?
All right, I feel COP26 is arguably or unarguably the most important COP of all the conference of the parties we've had in the past, considering the fact that it is giving us this platform to actually plan and work towards the seamless chance we have in achieving the 1.5 degree temperature that we are looking at as a people. So COP26 is a very crucial time. It's a very crucial opportunity that we just need, that the politicians need to be committed and ensure that commitments are beyond political gimmicks. That's something they need to work on. If you consider COVID-19, the way it came, that it ravaged the planet Earth, nobody expected this, whereby dreams were just shattered and we couldn't even continue from where we all wanted to be. So it's an example to us that if climate change should come, and the impact will definitely be greater than COVID-19. So I feel COP26 is a critical summit for global climate action. And considering the 2021 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, before that is IPCC, to achieve 1.5 degree target is still feasible, only if we take on unprecedented action during this program. So COP26 is an important COP, which I'm going to refer to as the greatest, or should I call it the slimest chance we have to make a plan towards achieving the 1.5 degree target, which I believe is still feasible, even though the IPCC report is giving us a kind of scary orientation on that it's not possible. But if the politicians, the stakeholders, all environmental actors come together at this COP26 and see it as the last chance we have to ensure we achieve 1.5 degree target, it's got to be a great time. And this is the time for us to include the youth, even more than the way it used to be. We need to engage the youth more and ensure that the climate financing as well, excuse me, to ensure that the climate financing this time is not just on paper. It is something that we are going to be working on to ensure that what we have promised are actually actualized in the end. Yes, COP26 in Glasgow is to the best of my knowledge, is the most important COP that all environmental actors across the world needs to work on and plan on, so that it won't be a waste of time, as many have been, like the one we've had in the past.
Thank you. Just before I ask you panelists to respond to one another, I'd just like to ask if there are any questions from the live audience here, or if there's any questions online. Does anybody have a question that you'd like to know? So to the panel, is there anybody on the panel that would like to ask another panelist a question about what you've all heard? No? Any comments? Okay, well, I'm going to sum up what we've heard then, and I think there's been what we've heard a lot about is actually that the framework. Thank you, Armenia, for talking so much about the progress that's being made. There's a question, so I'll come to that in a minute. Very interestingly, a lot of the stuff that's happening that you've been looking at in the context of the Commission, I think there's been some interesting work already done in Indonesia and perhaps in other places as well around developing those frameworks. So it's really interesting. I've heard a lot about the need to really drill down and make this very applicable in really community-based, connected places. The importance of making space for new voices, that surge of interest, and what's really been very similar to the research that we're doing is that actually this is everywhere. Most artists, most creative practitioners who are connected to the world around them feel passionately about this, and actually this is really what they want to do. This is what they want their work to be about, both in terms of content but also in terms of how. There is a question from the audience, so shall we? We'll bring her to the front so that you can see her.
Hi there. It took me a second to come up with a question. I'm an ex-corporate communicator who became a filmmaker, who became an activist, and I'm curious, there was some mention of Extinction Rebellion. I'm curious if the intersection between activism and culture, for instance, Extinction Rebellion has a very performative approach to their activism, and it's kind of like bringing culture into activism. I was curious if anybody had any comments about the intersection they'd seen, and if that's also outside of the, let's say, the institutional system, if that has helped bring culture a little more central into the climate change. I don't want to use the word fight, but yes, trying to face the issue.
Sure. Farhana, do you want to answer that? I can certainly support an answer on that as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question. I think one of the reasons why Extinction Rebellion proved so popular with the public was they didn't write reports. They were out in the street, they involved artists, huge numbers of ordinary people felt able to join in. That was one thing. On the emotional side, again, by not focusing on reports, they were able to allow people and create spaces to grieve. So often they had funeral marches for species that were going extinct with coffins and skeletons, and allowing people to express their emotional response to the climate and ecological crisis instead of just saying sign this petition, was really important. And I think that is a lesson that needs to be learned, and it's a space in which obviously the arts sector broadly, your emotional and bodily responses are really critical. And we know now from the work of huge numbers of neuroscientists that the body keeps the score. The body, retains and holds anxieties, and its joy is only released when you're able to involve also your body and just throwing report. And so that's also why I, as a lawyer, are spending so much of my time doing things, being engaged in the cultural, artistic, performative side of things, and encouraging that as a way in which people don't just have to be in their heads and remember facts. Going back to Yeats, again, facts don't on their own change the world. They have to be linked to the agency and our own way of understanding. So yeah, more and more and different movements need to act on all of our senses, and that's again what the arts speak to.
Thank you. I really liked your response, and I believe the world needs a lot more lawyers like you. Climate lawyers, among other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhana. Does anybody else from the panel want to comment on that question? We do have another question that's coming. No? Sophie, can you give us the next question? Just a little bit as well about Culture Declares is that what we saw with Culture Declares was, as Farhana said, that gestural moment on the streets, which actually really pushed institutions. So in fact, there was an institutional response because it really pushed institutions into also declaring climate emergencies, signing up to Culture Declares. Now music declares, architects declares, heritage declares. City of Milan has also declared a climate emergency. Actually, Farhana's had quite a lot to do with declaring climate emergencies. They're very grassroots up, and they have huge ricocheting effects, which is why for policymakers in the realm of cultural policy, as all our panelists have been saying, the cultural community is ready and waiting for that support and leadership, and indeed that funding, Bruno and Jasper, to actually build these movements. And I think we've got another question.
So this is from the on-site guests, so please keep these questions coming online as well. This is a question from Valda Chosnau, and she is posing to the panel this question: did all the ministers of culture sign the declaration, and are we 100% sure that this happened?
Armenia, one for you.
Of course, this was unanimously signed by the participating the Ministry of Culture of the G20 countries, so the invited countries, and plus high-level representative of international organizations who were invited, like UNESCO, ICOM, and so on. So yes, this is a process where you work with consensus. There is no real vote. It's approved or not.
And Armenia, on that basis, what can you give to Hilmar to take forward that commitment to culture in the G20 and in the declaration?
You mean for the follow-up, what we expect?
Yeah, for the follow-up.
Well, of course, we're really looking forward to our next round of cooperation with Indonesia, as the G20 process it is steered by a troika. So we had an excellent cooperation together with Saudi Arabia. The G20 Culture Declaration, since it is the very first, it has opened the way towards many directions. So there are many dossiers now that will need to be developed and looked for. And this will require a lot of coordination. So, and in particular in the declaration, which has established a G20 Culture Working Group, there is a recommendation to work on recommendation and actions aimed at advancing the contribution of cultural heritage in addressing climate change and promoting climate-focused cultural action. So this is one of the streams. And I think that what was really important in the declaration, the change in approach from the traditional approach of defending the sector from the impact of climate change to this proactive role that culture can play, and especially in better leveraging the potential of culture-based solutions for climate action. I think this is future direction where it will be very interesting to work together.
Hilmar, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly the direction that we are moving into. Proactive, like involving communities. And we really hope at the next summit here in Indonesia, we will also extend the participation of communities in particular, and also the civil society organizations to really have a voice in that. And I hope that Bruno, Jasper, Wole, you can come to Indonesia and also participate in that meeting here in Indonesia.
Thank you so much. So just a quick one, particularly to Jasper, Bruno and Wole, are you feeling optimistic? It feels like this is our time. This is the time for culture. Perhaps we'll start with Bruno.
Yes, I have a very strong hope because this is the time. We cannot wait anymore. The more we wait, the more we are getting.
Yeah.
So I just call upon other stakeholders to come on board because we will really need a holistic way of handling climate change. Yeah. If all stakeholders can not only work with the NGOs, we need government, we need culture, we need private sector actors, we need the locals down in this fight. Yeah.
Great. Bruno?
Yes.
Great. That's all you need to say. That's terrific. Wole?
Can I say something?
Yep.
This is the time. Can I talk?
Wole, please go ahead.
All right. Yes, I strongly believe this time, and I must use the opportunity to appreciate everyone, like a platform like this that is connecting the young people, carrying us, which young people along. It means a lot that we are indeed ready to take the action. And now this is the time, the more of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Hilmar?
Yeah, I just want to add something. So next year, we will organize a ritual, really. I type it here in the chat box. It's Ruwat Bumi. It's RUWAT. Bumi is earth. And Ruwat is basically cleaning the earth. So we will circulate the idea very soon. And I hope through Julie's Bicycle as well, the network. So to encourage participation from other people, and you're welcome, of course, to join. And hopefully, towards the end of the year, we will organize like a small conference on this. And yeah, you're all invited.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Hilmar. I'm sure that we will all commit 100% to cleaning the earth. It's our big purpose. So our final contributor is our renowned poet, fantastic poet, Mariam Bukar Hassan, aka Alan Islam, who has performed at major festivals and events both in Nigeria and internationally, and she is she's honoured us with a performance for today. I'm going to leave you with that before closing formally. Thank you, Alan Islam.
Your bones will break in a loud, deafening conspiracy of the culture of silence. Your flesh will peel in on each other. You will bleed to the last. Parched throat from the thirst of justice, everything around you will seem vague. You will never be normal, heard normal, seen normal. You will be called crazy, might even be called the Joker. If you dare to do the thing that's right, you will meet a whale called the system. You will become Jonah. You will turn to God, ask Him to cleanse you of yourself. You will walk to the people, talk to the people, act to the people, to know you are stuck on your purpose for reform. Some might and might not listen. Like a prophet, you must do the right thing anyway. Do the right thing for yourself first. Cleanse from the littlest of actions, like not throwing that chewing gum on the street, that plastic bottle in the waters. Spare the rivers, the seas, and the oceans. Save that water. Respect the air. Respect your body. Reduce emissions. Let's go green. Humans, upcycle. Restrain your excesses. Oh, restrain your excesses. Respect the soil. Practice regenerative agriculture. Humans, respect the earth. Do the right thing. Make someone smile. Drop a seed of compliment so it can grow into a garden of mended hearts, a full moon of mental stability. For a happy human yields a happy planet. Humans, we are all heroes walking around with no cape. Agents of change or destruction. Choosing a side depends on our actions, and Earth is like a ship on a sea, and we are its drivers. Our actions are the waves, the turbulence, and the icebergs. When we come together to save our planet, we save ourselves from sinking, because when it goes down, so do we. Human, be a change agent.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. Wonderful. Thank you to Alan Islam again for just giving us everything that culture can bring to this moment. So it's just, we've run out of time. I'd like to just thank you, all of you, for joining us. I want to start by thanking the amazing team of Julie's Bicycle. I am truly honoured, all of you, to work with you. You are just amazing. Thank you also to, thanks also to Ambassador Jill Morris, colleagues and friends at the British Council. You've been brilliant. All our amazing roundtable partners, artists and participants. We will be celebrating you and supporting you and reinforcing all those incredible conversations and insights that you have shared with us. Thank you also to the tech team here, to this wonderful space. Just for those of you who can't see, we are surrounded by beautiful trees and vegetation. It's fantastic. And of course, thank you to all of you who are listening and to our audience. Our deepest gratitude and debt, of course, is naturally for our precious Mother Earth, for which I think we can all be deeply, deeply grateful and deeply respectful. So that's it from us, from Julie's Bicycle, from me, Alison Tickell. We do join us for the final plenary. We have another final event on the 25th of October where we will have finished all of those conversations and bundled them up, and you're very welcome. That will be all online, and we will share those details with you. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, stay grateful, and we will see some of you outside during this gorgeous day in Italy, and for others, have a good COP. Let's all hope so. Thank you very much. For anybody who wants to, we've got some refreshments.